morning. Ann Louise Gittleman here, First Lady of Nutrition for the First Lady of Nutrition podcast. And as many of you know, I've spent my career shedding a spotlight on areas of health that have never been understood very much before, whether it's parasites, whether it's menopause, whether it's perimenopause or longevity. I've been rewriting the rules of nutrition. And now I'm going to have to rewrite them once again because I've got a very special guest with me today who has written a new book called The Calcium Connection, the Little-Known Enzyme at the Root of Your Cellular Health. Welcome, Brunde Broady, to the First Lady of Nutrition podcast.
Thank you for having me. I just have the ultimate level of respect and gratitude to all the work you've done. So thank you so much.
You're so very welcome. And I have the ultimate respect for you after reading a little bit about your bio. How did an MBA from Yale, who worked as a financial analyst, become so involved with nutrition? Would you share with us your story?
Absolutely. It was definitely not planned. It just started with my son. His name is Knute. And from the first hour of his life, he had a lot of different health issues, from breathing to sleeping problems to hypotonia, and then eventually to skin problems and swallowing problems. And basically, the medical community could not come up with any answers or treatment, which through a long series of events led me to the importance of this particular enzyme, which I know is a new concept. It's called Calcium ATPase. And after I got him settled with his health, I ended up spending over a decade learning everything there is to know about calcium ATPase and really realize the importance of it for every single person. So that's why I'm here today, is to share my knowledge to help people's health.
So what was the aha moment? So obviously, tell me first, what kind of symptoms did your son exhibit?
So one of the most obvious symptoms was hypotonia. And what that involved was just not the normal strength of a child. And in a particular way, he had something called ptosis, which is his eyelids were droopy over half of his eye. So the original thought was myasthenia gravis, which he tested negative for. But I was determined to figure out the cause. So when I was studying muscles, I realized that calcium regulation was a key component. And at the same time, I started to realize things that made his symptoms worse. So the aha moment was typing into the PubMed, which is the central point where scientific journals are, and typing TBHQ, which is a particular preservative, and finding out that it inhibited this particular enzyme, calcium ATPase, which is crucial to calcium regulation. And then from there, I looked at everything he was sensitive to, and it all had a negative action on this particular enzyme. So what I figured out was by reducing his exposure to these inhibitors of this enzyme, his symptoms dramatically improved.
The takeaway from that then is that certain preservatives can interfere with this particular intercellular contributor to calcium regulation.
Yeah, it ended up not just being preservatives, but every single toxin you can think of, from lead, mercury, cadmium, certain types of sunscreen, fire retardants. I mean, pretty much everything is not good for you. And then I found out things that could stimulate this enzyme, which are certain fruits and vegetables and different compounds, and also things that inhibited it or made things worse, such as lack of exercise, stress. And more importantly, I realized that many chronic diseases such as cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, obesity were all associated with low amounts of this enzyme. So I realized that this is important for all people.
So how do you get tested for it? My people are going to want to know, because they go and they get tested for calcium. They get tested for glucose. They get tested for triglycerides. We do tissue mineral analysis that shows the tissue levels of some of the toxic minerals, as well as some of the very important macro minerals. How would you know if you're deficient?
Yeah, what's so frustrating is despite the fact that there's 25,000 articles on the association between low calcium ATPase and this wide range of diseases, there's currently no test available, but I am actively working to develop that with a biotech company. But in the meantime, essentially, if you have diabetes or obesity or heart disease or cancer, those are all associated with low levels of calcium ATPase. But for the average person, your A1C levels and your LDL cholesterol levels can also give you an idea of your calcium ATPase levels.
Well, what about those of us that are low blood calcium, low serum calcium? Is that an indicator of anything?
No, but what's interesting, so the body has 2.2 pounds of calcium, and about a teaspoon and a quarter of that is called free calcium, and that's in your bloodstream and in your cells. And if you have an overload of calcium, that will end up forcing more calcium into the cells, which can kind of wreak havoc with calcium regulation. But that's not really the main driver, the problem. What calcium ATPase does is when the calcium levels are high, it helps to bring the calcium levels down. And if you don't have enough of that, it just ends up causing a lot of different problems.
So your son had all of these unresolved symptoms, and he started exhibiting them during the first hour of birth. You said to me offline.
Yes, he did, and so he actually I had an epidural, which, as it turns out, lidocaine is a very powerful calcium ATPase inhibitor. And then from there, at the time, 20 years ago, nobody was really aware of environmental issues. So, of course, I just moved into a new house. So I had paint, new floors. I didn't have any idea about cleaning products. He was on formula, which is often associated with aluminum. And then the first foods he started on were things like Cheerios, different yogurts, different kind of fruit mixes that all have compounds that inhibit calcium ATPase. So I was kind of, in food dyes, I was kind of in a total vacuum of realizing those things could affect his health.
So how long did it take from all of these disparate symptoms to get real resolution?
So it took me about 2.5 years to really zone in on it. And of course, I went through the process of thinking I was crazy, that what I was observing, couldn't have been the cause, and trying and retrying things. But ultimately, it was just an obvious truth. And of course, there also was the element of having to convince my parents and my sisters not to, feed him the normal foods. And then, at the end of the day, they realized what I was saying was true and were the biggest supporters of that. But it definitely took a long time to really trust what was happening, because it was kind of a hassle.
Well, it was a big inconvenience, and here you are, a new mother, not really knowing what was going on and not getting much assistance from conventional medicine. So is there basically a tipping point where he started getting well because of something you were doing with a change of feeding or change of supplementation?
Yeah, absolutely. It was about when he was 2.5 that I really began to trust my instincts. And pretty much from there, his symptoms very much improved, but there definitely were still periods until he was about 4 that I thought, maybe I was overreacting or this or that, but the consistency of his problems, and especially because he was so young, and I knew that it was nothing to do with his emotional environment or, other kind of traditional things that cause problems. And he also had tested negative for every allergy, for every other possibility, cystic fibrosis, all the different muscle issues, metabolic issues, that I was kind of left with, okay, let me just understand what's happening to him, which really involved 24/7 observation. And, by the time he was 2.5, I had really understood that it was really my responsibility. And also, as a new mother, nothing is as important as the health of your child.
Oh,
So,
so true.
so my whole world revolved around that. And, ultimately I found so much relief in finding ways to help him, which continued to this day. He's 20 years old and he's figured out himself that, even though he's at college, he has to be careful. And if he doesn't, it still has a really negative effect on him. So, he's my biggest supporter. And actually, he was a person that encouraged me to write the book.
How interesting. And the book is available, by the way, at Amazon.
On Amazon, on barnesandnoble.com. And it's coming out officially on April 6th.
So by the time this is aired, people will be able to buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
But and actually, I feel like so compelled because this is so much my mission in life that I would like to provide you with 25 free books that you can distribute to people that are interested, because it's really a labor of love.
Oh, to say the least, a labor of love, a labor from the heart.
More than you could possibly know. I don't want other people to go through what I went through, both with their children and also as adults, really being able to help prevent chronic disease.
So does your book talk about all the steps that people can take to neutralize this particular enzyme? I hope I'm using the correct terminology.
Yes, so actually you want to have this enzyme, and this book explains this enzyme because I know it's a new concept. It explains its relationship to all sorts of diseases, but most importantly, it explains, the toxins that have a negative impact and ways to prevent that. And then also, which is exciting, is that there's different compounds in food that have actually been shown to stimulate this enzyme, as well as exercise and stress reduction. So the exciting thing in the meantime, because there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies now looking at this enzyme, but in the meantime, there's actually action you can take to optimize your levels.
So what are the most deleterious environmental assaults that we should be aware of? If you were to name the top 5, let's say.
So obviously the ones that, for example, you go into detail in your radical metabolism books, such as lead, mercury, aluminum, cadmium, are all scientifically shown to inhibit this enzyme. But some you may not be aware of is things like titanium dioxide and zinc oxide nanoparticles that are found in a lot of, quote, natural sunscreens.
Oh, that's a biggie. Would you repeat that for my listeners?
Yeah, so, chemical sunscreens also have a negative effect on calcium ATPase, but what has not been known in a general way is that nanoparticles of supposedly natural sunscreens, such as titanium dioxide and zinc dioxide, actually inhibit calcium ATPase in the skin. And why that's so important is because skin cancer is associated strongly with reduced calcium ATPase in the skin. So the solution is, or the good news is, there's many companies that now offer smaller levels of titanium and zinc oxide, for their users that actually don't cause this problem. So that's kind of a big one. Another one, of course, is sushi, which, from your book, about mercury, but especially tuna sushi, because tuna grade sushi has a lot of mercury. So just one serving, one roll of that actually is your mercury limit for the month.
Oh my gosh.
So those are 2 that are really kind of under the radar, because both seem like, good things to have, but both are not. And then also there's things like cadmium in your buttons and in your jewelry, and also in teen jewelry. And that's a major inhibitor of calcium ATPase. So it's really important to keep those things away from children. So those are a couple of things that may not stand out, but are really important.
You know, as I'm looking at the cover of your book and looking at the calcium connection, and I love the cover, the subtitle of the book to my listeners is The Little-Known Enzyme at the Root of Your Cellular Health. And cellular health is where it's at these days. But I'm thinking that when the body's exposed to any type of EMFs, it creates a dysregulation of calcium in the intercellular calcium in the body. So I'm wondering if EMFs have any impact on what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of unfortunately, those studies have been primarily done in Russia, but what they have shown is that EMF has a negative impact on calcium ATPase, which the net result is dysfunction in intercellular calcium. I mean, there definitely should be studies in the United States, but so far there are not many. But, you know, the Russians are pretty darn smart.
To say the least.
They figured this out. So it's clearly something that should be addressed.
So removing toxins, minimizing toxic overload is good for reducing the cellular detrimental effects of this particular enzyme. What can we do? Is there anything dietarily that's particularly good for this condition?
Yeah, absolutely. So one key thing, and maybe the most important key factor, is to reduce or manage your blood sugar. Because like you mentioned in your book, the sugar advances glycation. And because calcium ATPase is a protein, high blood sugar, the sugar attaches itself to the calcium ATPase protein, which inhibits calcium ATPase, which causes all sorts of problems throughout your body. The other kind of positive thing is that substances such as lutein, oleic acid, lipocene, resveratrol, vitamin E, have actually all been shown in research. Those compounds all stimulate calcium ATPase. So it's one more reason to eat healthy. I mean, a lot of people have said that, including you, which is all very powerful, but this is one more reason that reinforces those suggestions.
So I want to get very clear. Calcium ATPase is an enzyme that we should have in abundance.
Absolutely.
All right, and it can be neutralized or it can be suppressed or impacted by many negative environmental assaults.
Absolutely.
And we can enhance its operation or its function by the consumption of certain foods, certain enzymes, certain superfoods, shall we say, including resveratrol.
Yeah, and what's also important to know is, which is the good news, is that all types of exercise, including moderate aerobics, high intensity aerobics, as well as strength training, all stimulate calcium ATPase in your muscles and your heart. And just as kind of a background, as you age, the amount of calcium ATPase you have in those areas declines. And what's wonderful is when they test older people and who are doing these activities, the enzyme level rises. So you can exercise, which is positive. And the other factor is stress. The hormones that you release under stress inhibit calcium ATPase. But the great news is that yoga, meditation, different Asian meditation methods all have been shown clinically to reduce these stress enzymes. So basically, by eating these nutrient-rich foods, reducing high blood sugar episodes, exercising all types, as well as stress reduction, can all really help you optimize your calcium ATPase levels.
So your book outlines a way to optimize and reduce the negative impact of reduction of the ATPase. And how many chapters in your book? Can you go through the book and give us just a little thumbnail sketch
Sure.
of what you cover?
Yeah, so the first chapters, or the first chapter actually is my journey, which is much more in detail that I went through. The second part of the book is what calcium ATPase is, which is kind of a new concept. The third part of the book goes into quite a bit of detail about the different diseases and how they relate to calcium ATPase, which is really based in science because I wanted to have that credibility. But you can really pick and choose what diseases you're interested in. And then the fourth part of the book is the most important, and the toxin reduction gets very specific. I have checklists of different toxins and what you can do. And I really emphasize that whatever you do is a positive. So you don't have to do everything, but work through the list, and they're very specific. And then I move on to nutrition and start with blood sugar. And then secondly, the nutrients, but maybe most importantly, I give a lot of recipes
Oh,
that actually,
that's what
yeah,
I'm excited about. So
yeah,
recipes, can you share some of those top recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I just think it's so important for people to get actionable takeaway ideas from
sure.
what we're talking about so they know how to translate this into everyday living.
So one of the important things I think is easy to incorporate is the importance of berries, both blueberries, raspberries,
Yum,
blackberries,
yum, yum, yum.
strawberries are all really powerful or contain compounds that are really good for your calcium ATPase. And in terms of dinner or lunch, I have a lot of great recipes, such as asparagus soup, this absolutely wonderful chicken. You can't believe how good it tastes. My husband is like, this is better than any restaurant in New York.
That's saying quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he's just crazy about it. In fact, I have to avoid preparing it because he eats so much of it. Risotto, there's a wonderful risotto dish, some wonderful salad dishes, some great chili. So there's a wide range, and all these recipes, why they're so wonderful is that they all incorporate at least 3 compounds that are good for calcium ATPase. So even if you just incorporate them once or twice a week, you would really cover a lot of bases. And that was really important to me. And I got a really well-respected culinary chef to come up with these recipes because they're so delicious. So that's something that's really something people can really use regularly.
But you've done more than come up with delicious recipes. You've actually provided a wonderful theory about the causes of disease, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of a great thing about the recipes is that I have a chart in the book that actually lists what compounds are good for calcium ATPase. And then with the recipes, I actually demonstrate how these recipes have a positive effect on calcium ATPase. And then also I provide under each nutrient some great snack ideas. So for each nutrient, I provide 3 snack ideas, which also help your calcium ATPase. So there's just a lot of choices you can make that really are all positive for calcium ATPase.
So we're all looking for good snacks, Brunde. So can you give us a little hint, a little taste of one of those snacks?
Sure. So one snack that you may not think of regularly is just simply some baby tomatoes because they're really high in lipozine. Another one is a trail mix that has a number of the nuts such as pecans, walnuts, almonds, sunflower seeds that are also all great for calcium ATPase. And then lastly, this is probably one you've thought of, but celery is great for calcium ATPase. And paired with almond butter, it's like a double whammy of calcium ATPase snacks that are really easy to incorporate. And finally, red grapes are a great source of resveratrol, which is also really, and these compounds, and I include this in the book, it's not like I'm just saying they're good for you, which obviously they are. I actually share research that demonstrates they're particularly good for calcium ATPase. So it's kind of like a real motivation for eating these snacks, which you already know are good for you.
So tell me a little bit more about what your son Knute does on a regular basis. He obviously knows that he's a little sensitive because of this
Right. So
situation.
the most important thing that he needs to pay attention to is processed food, which is not so easy because, things like pizza and snacks and different candies all contain these compounds. But what he's learned is that when he eats things, he has a really difficult time concentrating. And it also triggers skin problems such as acne. And both of those things at this point, he's trying to maintain a 4.0 in mechanical engineering at Georgia Tech.
Oh my goodness, a bright boy like his mama, like his mama.
All those things are so important to him that on his own, he's completely careful of those. And also just getting in a taxi that has artificial smells involved.
Oh my gosh.
He just doesn't take them because it's just not worth it to him to have these problems.
Are there any supplements, excuse me, that he takes to circumvent these?
He eats the foods that stimulate it. And he also takes taurine, which is a really important amino acid that I know you mentioned in your books. But the great thing about taurine is that caffeine actually triggers the release of calcium from your storage vesicles within your cell, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. But what taurine does is it stimulates calcium ATPase, which helps the calcium to come back to the storage vesicles. So if you're kind of in a study frenzy and you're ingesting a lot of caffeine, taurine helps you prevent that kind of burned out feeling. So he takes taurine on a regular basis, as well as focusing on the food. And all three of those things are really important. When he doesn't do those things, he pays the price, which is really, for him, really a problem. So
what does he eat now that he knows he's sensitive? Is there a special diet he follows?
Right. So every breakfast he includes berries, some type of berry, which he knows is good for calcium ATPase, usually with oatmeal or eggs or avocado toast. Avocado is actually good for vitamin E. And then he also, for his snacks during the day, for one snack, he always includes a nut, such as almonds or walnuts or sunflower seeds. So by incorporating those twice a day, he's also boosting his calcium ATPase. Lunch and dinner are a little bit of wild cards, but he consistently avoids substances that he knows inhibit calcium ATPase unless it's a Friday night and he decides to indulge, which he always pays for on Saturday. But being a college kid, you have to kind of accept that. But he always knows he needs to get back on track, as well as exercise on a daily basis. He also does.
So, Brunde, I have a question as we start to conclude our wonderful podcast. Do you think this is the most important single enzyme that impacts your chances of contracting more deadly diseases?
Absolutely. And it starts from before you're born until your last years. When you're born, it's crucial to your brain development, which is one of the reasons why excess alcohol or recreational drugs or mercury are so important when you're having your child. And it goes through your life from diabetes, obesity, cancer, heart disease, and then it ends with Alzheimer's. Because believe it or not, one of the main drivers of Alzheimer's is dysregulated calcium. And calcium
But then we
ATPase,
have to spend some time on that. You say
yes,
that one of the drivers of Alzheimer's is dysregulated calcium.
right. So what typically happens, you have low calcium ATPase, which throws off the calcium regulation in your brain, which end up having two separate effects. One is that it leads to neuron death, which is the worst. And second of all, it affects neurotransmitter release, such as dopamine. But what's really exciting is I am involved with a biotech company that's come up with an enzyme that actually, by stimulating calcium ATPase, actually prevents neuron death and also stimulates neurotransmitters. So that's a few years off. But in the meantime, there's ways to protect your enzyme, which are just basically important for your brain function as you get older.
So, in conclusion, what's your vision for your book, The Calcium Connection? Who should read this book?
My vision for the book is simply mothers that are expecting, mothers with children, because calcium regulation is crucial to neurodevelopment. And then it continues through your lifetime with obesity, because reduced calcium ATPase reduces your metabolism. Diabetes, because reduced calcium ATPase can end up with death of your pancreatic cells. Cancer, because reduced calcium ATPase makes you more vulnerable to cancer. Heart disease, calcium ATPase plays a crucial role. So all the major diseases that can occur over your lifetime, when you have low calcium ATPase, it just makes you more vulnerable. And then finally, as you get older, Alzheimer's and dementia, you really want to give yourself a chance to not do anything that make it happen or make it worse. So my vision primarily is to educate people about calcium ATPase, and in doing so, increase their probability of having a healthy life and a healthy older years.
Marvelous. Would you thank all the folks at Skyhorse Publishing for me, please, for connecting you to me?
It's unbelievable. I mean, because it's a completely new concept, I am literally the first person on earth to communicate the importance of calcium ATPase other than the scientific studies. I'm incredibly grateful for Skyhorse to give me that opportunity, because it's so important. And even if it just, helps 10 people learn about calcium ATPase, it's worth writing because it's so important to people's health.
So key, so important. And again, the book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'll be looking forward to getting my copies and sending them out to all my contacts at all the big magazines and newsletters, so we'll help you as much as we can.
Right. And also, like I said previously, this is so important to me. And it's really such an act of love that I want to provide you with 25 free copies to distribute to people, only with the goal of getting this information out in the world.
I think this will be important for all the newsletters for the health targeted populations that are out there, people that are over the age of 50, and I'm one of them, that really need to know how to prevent Alzheimer's. That Alzheimer's connection was incredibly helpful to me. So I want to thank you so much for being my guest. Will you come back?
Absolutely. And I can definitely go into very much detail about all aspects of improving and protecting your calcium ATPase throughout your lifetime.
I love it. So I want to thank Brunde again, and I'm going to thank all my listeners for listening to the First Lady of Nutrition podcast. I want to especially acknowledge my new sponsor, cs-health.com, who are the producers of Vitality and Vitalica Plus. It's a wonderful enzyme activated dietary supplement that I take on a daily basis because it's so high in sulforaphane that also helps cellular health.
Great. And I just wanted to add one part of the puzzle, which is, as you mentioned, in radical metabolism, cell membranes play a really crucial role in calcium ATPase, and so do the vegetables and fruits that Ann Louise incorporates into her diet. So, her, unbeknownst to her, her methods are really powerful ways to protect and enhance your calcium ATPase. So on that note, I just wanted to leave that because her advice has been so powerful to helping people towards health.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful endorsement. Quite
it's
unexpected and quite delightful.
Well, it's absolutely the truth. So I'll leave you with that. My whole goal is to help people have better health. And by following her advice, you come a long way towards achieving that.
So thank you so much, everybody, for listening in. May you all live till 120. On Mea Esrim, as my grandfather used to say. Goodbye, good luck, and lots of love. Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Louise here with just one more thing. Thank you so much for being a fan of my work. And if you like this video, please check out all my other videos. Please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications.